I never told this right. Not because I was hiding it, because telling a thing right takes time, and the right person asking. So here it is, Sulphur Creek Hollow, 1879. A miner nobody had given up on yet, because he hadn't given up on himself, and a woman the land had been waiting to introduce to him for 2 winters already. You may have heard stories about a strike in the hollow. You may have heard it was luck. You may have heard it was something stranger. All of those are partially true. That's the thing about the hollow. It holds more than one answer at once. It was built that way. The land out here doesn't give you what you want. It gives you what fits. Callum Driscoll had been in Nevada's mining country for 15 years by the time this story begins. 15 years is a long apprenticeship. Most men use it to get rich. Callum used it to learn things he couldn't quite name yet. The weight of a hill when it's hollow underneath. The smell of sulphur water before you've broken ground to find it. The way certain silence means something is listening back. He didn't know he'd learned any of that. He thought he'd just been unlucky with silver. The men at Quincy Flats trading post didn't have much patience for his 3rd season at a hollow that had already broken 100 better men. They said what men said. Driscoll, give it up. Driscoll, that vein was a rumor to begin with. Driscoll, even the Shoshone won't camp near that hollow anymore.
The Shoshone not camping near a place doesn't mean there's nothing there. It might mean there is.
Nobody at the counter particularly wanted to hear that. Wendell Tarp polished his glass and said nothing, which was his way of agreeing without committing. The porch ran the full front of Quincy Flats post. 3 benches. On afternoons when the inside got close with tobacco and argument, men drifted out to sit. That afternoon there was nobody on the porch but Callum and a woman he recognized from the hollow. He'd seen her twice at the ruins. Once gathering something from the old assay office rubble. Once sitting at the rim of the dry creek bed in the early morning, perfectly still. The way you sit when you're not resting but listening. He'd given her a nod and she'd given him one back, and that had been the extent of their acquaintance. He poured his whiskey into his tin cup and held the bottle toward her without making a particular thing of it. She looked at the bottle the way people look at something they've thought about before. Then she got her own cup from her pack and held it out.
I know who you are. The one digging the hollow's south face.
Callum Driscoll. I've seen you at the creek bed.
2 winters I've been in the hollow. Before that I was with my band on the mesa. Before that I was somewhere else.
He didn't ask about the gaps. That's the thing most people miss. What you don't ask is as much a gift as what you do.
You're looking for what the last men said was there.
Silver vein, running east-northeast from the main shaft. They swore to it before they pulled out.
The water is still in the creek.
He turned to look at her. Pawa Tasovitz was not a woman who said things lightly. He had enough years reading silence to know that. But Sulphur Run had been dry for a decade. Everyone said so. The alkali flats had taken the water table and kept it.
Sulphur Run dried up 8 years back. I've walked that bed. It's quartzite and dust.
Welling doesn't mean on top. Water knows more than one path.
They sat with that for a while. The light was doing what Nevada light does in late afternoon, going sideways, finding every edge and making it amber. Callum drank his whiskey. Pawa drank hers. She told him her name and what it meant. Water that returns. He thought that was a very specific name for this particular moment. He asked her to show him the creek bed in the morning. She said she would. They might have ended the day there, quietly, on a bench that listed gently left. But then a wagon came down the Quincy Road with more load than freight. A theodolite, 3 crates of equipment, and Orson Yek sitting up beside his hired man, like a man who has done his calculations and found them satisfying. Orson Yek was not a man Callum disliked exactly. He was a man who made Callum tired, the kind of tired that comes from watching someone be very confident about the wrong things. Orson had assay numbers and survey maps and a reputation in 3 counties for finding silver where other men found nothing. What he did not have was 15 years of listening to the same land breathe. He didn't look at Parwa. Not because he was hostile to her, he simply didn't see her. She was outside the frame of what he was measuring. Parwa watched him unload his theodolite, watched the way he talked to his hired man, pointing at horizons, referencing numbers. She picked up her cup and her pack, and she said something under her breath in Shoshone that Callum didn't know. And then she said the rest of it in English. Callum kept his eyes on Orson's wagon. Why not?
Because he is not Elmo looking. He is measuring.
She walked off the porch into the lowering amber light. Callum watched Orson set up his instrument in the road and point it south towards Sulphur Creek Hollow and thought, what is the difference between looking and measuring? He didn't have the answer yet, but the question had found him, which is where all useful questions begin. The hollow in early morning is a different place than it is at noon. At noon it holds heat like a bowl holds soup, and the light hammers everything flat. But at dawn it breathes. The shadow of the east rim stretches across the dry creek bed, and the quartzite glows pale gold, and you can see, if you're standing in the right place at the right angle, that the stones are not scattered the way erosion scatters things. They're laid in patterns. Parwa was already at the creek bed when Callum got there. She'd built no fire and eaten nothing as far as he could tell. She was sitting at the western end of the bed where the quartzite was densest, her hands in her lap, her eyes on the stones.
I've walked this bed a dozen times. Never looked at it like this.
You were looking for what you could take out.
She ran her hand along a line of stones,
Each ear.
not pointing, just tracing, the way you read a page when you already know the words and are just reminding yourself. Callum crouched beside her. He'd been a miner long enough to know something about water and silver,
But water doesn't care about
that silver deposits form where mineral-rich water moves slowly through certain rock. That if this bed had been an active creek for 1,000 years before it went dry on top,
If the water's still moving underground the villa, it could still be feeding the formation.
that was the moment he shifted. Not because he believed in dreams. He was still Callum Driscoll, a man who trusted weight and measure and the smell of mineral in fresh-cut rock. But the pattern in the stones was readable, in his language. The quartzite had been sorted and deposited by moving water. The flood lines ran a direction. He could read that direction. He could sink a shaft along that direction and know why. "What did you dream?" he asked.
underground, still running. Silver in the dark where the water goes. Dreams show you what is true. They don't always explain what to deal with. That part takes.
Callum Driscoll read the pattern as he understood it. The flood lines curling, the stone density building, and he put his shaft at what seemed the natural terminus of that flow. He dug for 3 days. He hit nothing. Not nothing. There was rock and old mineral staining, and at one point a smell that made him think of water. But he followed that down another 4 feet and found only dry silica. He pulled his tools out and sat on the shaft collar at dusk and looked at his hands. Orson Yek found him there. Orson had spent his 3 days on the mesa ridgeline with his theodolite, triangulating, calculating. He came down with a piece of paper in his hand and the careful expression of a man who has found a way to be generous.
Our dignities. Heard you've been digging the creek bed. I've run my numbers on the information. Want to hear my honest assessment? I expect you'll give it regardless. The hollow's played. 3 assays in 8 years have come up empty. You've just spent 3 days confirming it.
Callum looked at the offer. A fair price, in this market, was enough to eat for a winter and resupply for a new season somewhere else. It was a door out of the hollow that left his dignity intact. It was not nothing. He sat there in the near dark, and he felt, for the first time in 15 seasons, like a man who had genuinely been wrong about a place. Her voice came from the ruined saloon, where she'd been sitting in the shadow of the standing walls. Callum didn't look up right away. Orson Yek did, surprised apparently to discover there was a third person in the hollow at this hour.
The water in my dream ran east, not west. I read the stones and saw the water going west. You were reading them backwards.
Callum looked at Orson's face, the careful blankness of a man deciding whether to engage with this or dismiss it. Then he looked at his hands. Then he looked at the shaft collar he'd been sitting on. West. He dug west. There's a teaching, and it comes up in many traditions, in many voices, that says, when a vision seems wrong, wait. The vision is not wrong. The direction you applied it is wrong. Truth arrives before you know how to hold it. Pawa Tasovitz had been holding her truth for 2 winters, waiting for someone who would ask her the right question at the right time. Callum asked,
East of the shaft.
12 feet east of the shaft collar? Orson Yek said nothing for a long moment. Then he said, Driscoll, you're going to dig a second shaft because of a woman's dream.
I'm going to dig a second shaft for everybody.
Orson left that night. He did not leave the hollow. He went to his camp on the mesa's lower slope with his theodolite and his papers and his careful calculations. And he worked something out by lantern light, and by morning he had filed a provisional claim on the western shaft location, the one Callum had abandoned. That was Orson being Orson, measuring what he could see and claiming what could be documented. He was not wrong exactly, he was just not right enough. 12 feet east of the failed shaft collar, Callum started again. He worked without talking. Pawa sat on a flat quartzite slab at the creek bed's edge, not watching him but present, the way you're present at something important. Not directing it, just witnessing. He went down 4 feet. 6. 8. The rock changed under him, the silica dropping away, something wetter in the mineral smell. He stopped. He hit it again, carefully, and listened to the sound. Not a stream, not sulfur run magically restored, but a seep. Underground water moving through a fault, slow and cold and mineral rich, exactly as a water table moves when it goes below the reach of drought. and in the rock surrounding that seep, staining the fault walls with the characteristic grey-black sheen that 15 years had taught him to recognize across distances, across darkness, across the difference between hope and fact. Silver. He climbed out of the shaft. Parwa had come to the collar when she heard the different sound. She looked at his face and didn't ask. His face was saying it clearly enough.
Just like you said.
John, just like I dreamed.
He could have asked her then about the elders who cast her out for the dream. He didn't. That was her story to carry or set down as she chose. What he did was go to Quincy Flats and file a claim before Orson came back down from the mesa, and he put 2 names on it, his and hers, split 60-40 in her favor for the creek bed location because she'd been living in the hollow for 2 winters, and the land was more hers than his in every way that couldn't be measured by a land office. Wendell Tarp witnessed the filing. He didn't say much, just poured 2 cups without being asked. Orson Yek got back his filing fee and a lesson that the land office clerk enjoyed telling for years afterward, that a man's theodolite had been pointed at a worthless shaft while 40 feet away, in the direction an outlawed Shoshone woman's dream had indicated, the real vein waited. Orson wasn't a bad man. He filed a new claim on Crescent Peak and did well enough. He and Callum remained on speaking terms, the kind of terms men keep when they've taught each other something neither will fully admit. The silver vein at Sulphur Creek Hollow proved out to be modest by Nevada standards. Not a mother lode, not a camp rebuilder, but enough for Callum to work steady for 3 more seasons. Enough for Parwa's portion to carry weight in her own hands. Enough to confirm what the hollow had always been saying to anyone who stayed long enough to hear it. She didn't stay for the full season. When the shaft was properly timbered and the claim was legitimate and the work had settled into the daily rhythm of extraction, Parwa Tasovitz packed her canvas jacket and her herb bundles and walked up the switchback trail to the Pahut Mesa ridgeline. Callum watched her go. He thought about calling up something. A thanks, a goodbye, some marker for what this had been. But the hollow was quiet, and the words seemed like they'd land wrong, like saying something out loud about a river while you're standing in it. Later he heard she'd gone back to her band, that the elders received her, not with ceremony, not with acknowledgement that the dream was right after all, just received her the way the land receives rain that finally comes, without fanfare, because the need for it was already known. Here's what I'll tell you about that story, and then I'll stop. 2 people who didn't belong anywhere found each other in a hollow that nobody else wanted, and between them they held enough of the truth to find what was there. Not because the vision was magical, not because Callum's 15 years of reading the land were meaningless, because both things were real. The water was there. The stones said so if you knew which direction to read from. The dream said so if you knew what dreams are actually saying. Some truths need 2 kinds of eyes to see them whole. Callum Driscoll worked the hollow for 3 more seasons and then moved on, which is what miners do. He never found another strike like it. He didn't seem particularly bothered by that. He'd found something harder to locate. The knowledge that the land had been trying to show him things for 15 years, and that he'd learned to listen just enough, just in time, with just the right help. The hollow is quiet now, has been for a long time. The timbered shaft has rotted. The creek bed still has the quartzite pattern in it. Still reads if you know which direction to start from. Some places wait. They know how to do it. I never told this, right? But I think, this time, it's close.